Alright, in this video we're going to be talking about the event we just did yesterday. So, hi, my name is Josh. I run a Pokemon card business with my wife Nicole, and we just had our first event in February, just yesterday. So, we've done this card show before, or with this organizer before, but it was in a new hotel. So, definitely, I would say a better hotel than we've been in previously. Just had a really nice layout, really nice flow, good lighting pretty much everywhere. So Nicole also got to come along for this one, which was super great. So this would be the second card show that she's vended at. We got the grandma to watch the kids for us. So yeah, it's definitely, again, she now just being it's her second show, she is getting just more comfortable dealing with the cards and with people. And I mean, she's always been fine like vending and stuff with our art business that I've mentioned before. She's vended for that too, but there's something with the cards, it's a lot easier again to engage. We've just noticed that it's much more natural to engage over Pokemon cards than over something like original art. So people want to show off their collections, they want to show off like, you know, stuff they want to trade, they want to talk about Pokemon. And yeah, so she's very good about doing that, especially with, you know, the other Wise Girlfriends ladies. Yeah, she's pretty good about engaging and getting, you know, a lot more whatever out of them. I mean, sometimes, you know, this kind of makes ladies a little bit more nervous, and so having her along definitely is helpful. She's great with kids too, obviously, because, you know, we have kids, and so in a way sometimes we're like, younger kids might get a little bit too off-put or nervous by all this. It's nice to have Nicole along to kind of be a not so frightening presence, I suppose. That's like the best way to put it. And she was able to, you know, she's seen me do enough comping of cards and trades and whatever, that she handled a couple of the smaller ones that she felt comfortable doing. So she was, just total up what the cards are worth and away you go. Obviously too, she's able to handle a lot of the transactions, you know, handing money to me to either make change or to be on our way. So in this show we had a lot more buying and trading than we've had in a couple of shows. So it's probably been the last 3 shows, buying and trading, or buying and like trading into us was pretty low. So we weren't going into the show low on inventory, but definitely not as robust as I feel comfortable with. I like having a decent variety of, you know, kind of price points, and we were just a little bit low, which kind of forced me to last show kind of go around to other vendors and just pick up cards, and which I was paying like 95% of market, which is fine, but like not super ideal, and definitely not like a sustainable practice. But it was just I need to fill my case, and in my area, Facebook Marketplace is okay, but it's mostly other vendors selling on Facebook Marketplace, and so it's obviously they are not willing to negotiate like online and Facebook. Hello, sir, I'm working. Thank you. Cats. So it's a little hard on Facebook Marketplace because some of the vendors don't really acknowledge or tell you that they are Pokemon card vendors. So I've accidentally run into this where I was trying to negotiate a price on some cards, and people were being very firm and kind of rude. In a way, you could have just said, hey, like, I'm a vendor, not just like a local person who's just trying to sell off their collection, because that's what it looks like they're doing. They have a ton of cards, and there's no acknowledgement of like, I'm not trying to sell a collection at a percentage. Like, I'm a vendor just trying to run a business. Well, I would obviously approach you very differently. So, but it's because I'm new to the area and I'm not familiar with the local vendors, and there's probably like I said before, definitely like probably 7, 8 maybe major vendors in the area, and I've just accidentally messaged them on Facebook offering percentages on cards. So whoopsie. But yeah, with this show, I won't have to really bother trying to source additional cards. There was so much trade in, and we bought so much that I'm set now for the next show, which is fantastic. That's what I want to happen, because I want to take all of the digital sales and cash sale revenue and apply that to more booster boxes. This is the goal, is to get the booster box part of everything up and running. And if I'm having to take liquid capital and buy more singles, that's not quite the idea. We use the card shows and the singles to help kind of funnel everything at the website, the socials, and getting booster boxes. That's the bread and butter. When we set up on the table, booster boxes are front and center. You know, the singles are obviously in binders and in like a case, so people still whatever, but you know, when I give my spiel at the table and I point everything out to people, the booster boxes is it's the last thing that I point out, very like intentionally. So, and it's the way the psychology works. When you're being told a list of things, you remember the first thing and the last thing. So all the stuff in the middle kind of gets lost. So the first thing I point out is, if they're not looking at anything specifically, I point out the case. If they're looking at like a binder already, then I point out that binder, then go to the case, the other binder, and then lastly, booster boxes. So kind of intentional. And what I've noticed in general is people do see the table, but when you're looking at 130 tables like there was at this last show, everything can kind of start to gloss over. And especially when cases are huge and there's 70 or 100 cards in the case, stuff starts to gloss over. If you just have piles and piles and piles and piles of binders on top of binders on top of binders, which I've also seen, stuff starts to gloss over. When there's just stacks of stuff everywhere, you know, the table is front to back and then just stacked up like 2 feet of stuff, everything glosses over. So it's hard to look at stuff sometimes as tables are so disorganized. So, you know, we try and keep ours very, you know, clean and succinct. Case, binder, sealed stuff on the table, right behind all that, and we put it on, you know, we tier it so that it's raised up. And then but even then, I like when I point out the booster boxes right at the end, like, oh, look at that, like it's right there, man, front and center. But that's the thing, you just get so numb to the visual stimuli that's everywhere that just simply directing people really, you know, does help cue them in. So I guess that's a vending tip. I don't know. I found that it works. It works for our art business as well. So it seemed really obvious that of the things that we had for our art business, you know, prints, stickers, whatever, it seemed really obvious all that stuff is there. It's hanging up on walls, like it's very clear. But again, when you're looking at hundreds of, you know, booths at one event, stuff just starts to gloss over. You start just getting numb to all the visual stimuli. So simply being like, we have, you know, this, and this, and then, you know, and as you are visually pointing out things, oh, okay, right. So just that little bit of hand-holding for customers definitely seems to work. Whether or not they buy stuff doesn't matter. They become aware of it, so it's in their brain. And we actually had, this show was interesting we had a lot of people being a lot more like forthright with the show. So like, because Nicole is there, that really helps. If I'm preoccupied with comping like a trade or a buy, which I actually had to do quite a bit of that. I noticed that the show previously, when I was alone, I had a couple of big trades. So big as in lots of cards. If it's big value, that's actually super easy. It's more about number of cards that I'm trying to comp. Is when you start approaching like a dozen cards, because they're kind of low end stuff that they're trading into a bigger thing, I can get bogged down pretty quickly as I'm trying to like comp all these cards out. And I've noticed that people will walk up, and I do my best to multitask. So as I'm comping, somebody walks up, I greet, I give them the spiel, and then I'm kind of back to comping. So I can't really engage. Sometimes I'm able to, somebody's very nice and will have exact change for a card or whatever. But I've seen plenty of people come up, wait while I'm doing this thing, and then get tired of waiting and leave. So And sometimes if it's busy, if I'm comping a trade or a buy, I can see 1 to 4 or 5 people walk away. So in my mind, doing one, dude, I'm working here. You're fine. So I have noticed that people will just not want to wait. Because there's plenty of vendors, there's plenty of tables, they can move on. So they don't need to wait for me. So if I'm comping a lot of cards, I'm losing out on 1 to 4 or 5-ish transactions every time I do that. Well, with Nicole there, we missed out on fewer of those, transactions because it was something that she could either handle, or she just asked people to politely basically he'll do you next when he's done with this one. So I literally this show was so busy that I would roll immediately I'd finish one deal and roll immediately into the next. I kind of had a queue of 1 to 2 to 3 people for several hours. So, which is great. That's what you want to have happen. So that was super interesting. And we had people who we were kind of near the front. I've noticed that in this show. I think that if you're newer, you kind of get set up in the foyer or the front or the hallway, right up front of the main room. I've just observed that the people usually in the main room are bigger vendors, as in more cards, more cases, more whatever, and people who've been there a while. So, which I get that. I think that though there is a perk to being right outside the room. Now we were off to the side, but the way the hotel had a very fancy entryway and stuff, a little step down garden area inside the whole front entrance. The front entrance is massive. That's not just this little whatever. This is a very, very nice hotel. So they had actually kind of 2 paths to get to us, as the tables were teed basically right outside the entrance of the main showroom, and we were kind of on the end of one tee, but there's also another step from the garden, and there was vendors down in there as well. So we were actually in a pretty good area where sometimes those event halls get super crowded because there's really only a couple of ways to set up tables, and then you just have this river flow of people, and sometimes that gets super crowded. Well, by us, we had a lot more space because we're not in that main room, so people were all allowed to kind of exist, hang out on our little 6-foot table. We could have a dozen people around us just because we had that much space and people were able to see. So we had, sometimes we were one of the first or second stops people made, and they would they're showing off whatever. It's all right, well, you want to sell this card? Well, yep, here's we are buying, which we did a better job this time of telling people that we were buying. I'd never done that because it just seems obvious, but because we had, and I've noticed this across the shows, and this show was no exception, was I had a lot of people telling me this was their first show, or they just got back into collecting and this was their first show. So just a lot of newbies. People are catching the hype on Pokemon at the moment, and it's showing because I'm talking to people who are brand new all the time, or they've been collecting for years but they've never gone to a card show, and this was their first show. Again, I think I said this one of the videos, but when I hear online that Pokemon is dying, or the market's crashing, or it's a correction, or whatever, I guess I'm just not seeing that boots on the ground in these shows. Maybe that's true on East and West Coast. I'm in the Midwest. Any cultural phenomenon, economic, whatever, it always starts on the East or the West Coast, and then it takes probably 2 to 5 years for it to come to the Midwest. So that's just historically what's happened. So we're always not a day late and a dollar short, but we're always just one generation behind on stuff. So I don't know, but yeah, so lots of new people, and we because Nicole was there, we were able to engage really, really well. If I couldn't, she could. So that was really great, and you just have just natural organic engagement with people. And we had people come around and be like, hey, well, we want to do a lap, but we'll come back. We've heard that in vending art where people don't want to pick something up because they just got there, they want to do their lap, they'll be back, they never come back. But with Pokemon, it's very different in a way where I've had lots of people who have said, like, we're gonna do a lap and we'll be back, and they come back. And then at this show in particular, everyone was, again, hard on sleeve, I guess is the best way I'd put it, where they're just like, we shopped this card around to sell, and everyone offered us what you offered us, but we want to come back to you. We heard that like a few times, and it was our first show that we've heard that before. So we've seen a lot of the same people. So literally, we're just starting our third month of vending. We already have repeat customers. We have people who track us down to come and deal with us. And I couldn't tell you why, not to be like whatever at us, but I think it's just, I can't believe that other vendors are mean. I mean, we're just us. We just be nice. That true Midwest polite, not that pretend stuff, but we're just genuinely excited about Pokemon, especially when there's the two of us. Then it's super easy, because again, if I'm busy, she can be, excited about Pokemon on our behalf. So yeah, having repeat customers now is awesome. People tracking us down is awesome. People, getting an offer from us, shopping it around, getting an identical offer from other vendors, but wanting to specifically come back to us, awesome. People who bought stuff from us, but said like, yep, we just got here, but we really want whatever, coming back around again and being very forthright on we wanted to come back to this table. Like, well, that's great. So whatever we're doing, clearly we're doing something that's resonating with, the people. And, that's all we want. So, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what that is, but sometimes it's talking about, how we used to live in North Dakota and hunting deer, elk, and moose, apparently, which is something that Nicole and I have experience doing. So sometimes that's the thing that like closes the deal. So who knew? But so that's super exciting. We brought, of course, all of our sealed stuff, the Japanese, Chinese booster boxes, and sold not a ton, but definitely some. We had a little 6-foot table, and we were packed. So packed, I couldn't put out the physical email list, so we had the digital one. But honestly, we were so busy that you want to keep the natural flow of conversation occurring. And sometimes when you do an ask like, oh, hey, by the way, you can join our email list and then we'll give you a free Japanese pack and you have to use this QR code over there, blah, blah, blah. And so like, it's a little chunky when it comes out of like a very natural, because it just feels super salesy. And I know we should do it, but again, the natural flow of the conversation kind of like doesn't always call for that, where it feels like not icky, but like, again, just feels chunky when it kind of comes out at the end. So not so much good on the email list this time, to the point of I think I might redo the signage on that and just kind of have it written there, because people do like look at signs, but yeah, just kind of having it there of being like, here's the QR code of the email list, sign up, get a free Japanese pack. So that way we have something that's passively advertising that. Otherwise it's just relying on us telling people. But we couldn't even have the physical one on there. The 6-foot tables are too small. We have too much stuff. So we definitely need an 8-foot, or we need a way to display things off of the 6-foot table, or we need 2 6-foot tables would be my guess. And we didn't even bring much in like merch. We only had 3 of like the Chinese card holders left, so there was just not that much even for merch. It was all just cards. But yeah, dude, I don't need to hear from you. You're fine. So that was, I mean, it's good to know that like 6 foot is obvious. There's no tables smaller than 6 foot, but 6 foot really isn't big enough. We kind of need an 8 foot, or we need to do like a 12 foot. Yeah, that's definitely good to know that that's like not a problem that we have, but a thing that we need to be kind of aware of, that we definitely have to kind of like pare down our setup when we do a 6 foot table. So, but it was a lot of singles this time, and we did do a good amount of booster boxes. Nihil Zero, I think we were the only ones there that had it, and we only had 2 because on Facebook they were selling so much that, yeah, we only had 2, but we sold them both. And we obviously a lot of Mega Dream. Everyone's after Ascended Heroes, and it's hard to get, obviously, because of the staggered release. And again, the scalping over here is just super bad. So yeah, we bought some. We were able to find it. I mentioned this in, I think, the one video, but we don't flip English stuff. That's just not something that's in print that you can still get at the store at MSRP. We don't do that. We don't think that that's we don't think that's a good business practice. So that's why we went with the Japanese and Chinese booster boxes. That's exactly how that business, or that sector of the business works, is you are a middleman for that. So now English that's like out of print, that's so like anything that's vintage or like out of print, yes, that is what vendors for card shows, that's exactly what you should be into. But stuff that's at Walmart and buying it, flipping it, that's not what we do. So when we bought our Ascended Heroes, that was for us, and obviously for you, because you get to watch it when we rip the God Pack and stuff like that. If you haven't seen the God Pack, there's a video of it, and you should definitely see it because it's exciting. But Ascended Heroes was there. Those 3-pack those tech sticker collections were there, and getting scalped. So definitely a bummer. But I think that just is a boost for Mega Dream because, again, guaranteed pull rates, 10 packs, yeah, it's in Japanese, but if you don't mind that it's in Japanese, I mean, you can for sure get Mega Dream. So there's no like random or hard to find or trying to hunt down Ascended Heroes that's already been bought up by scalpers and gone. So, yep. And again, it's still, I mean, yeah, we're only at the start of our 3rd month, but I'm still having to explain what Japanese, Chinese, like booster boxes are all about. So, which is, I mean, again, the more knowledge that I can attain in these things definitely like helps sell it, basically, because I'm just running every single show. I'm running into people who just don't know what these things are, and they obviously have heard of Japanese, and they have typically heard that like Japanese have better hit rates or whatever, but they are too nervous to pull the trigger because it's just unknown. And so having somebody be like, it's not scary, it's okay to like get it and like hear some of like the rundown and really the perks of kind of why you should. So, and I think that that's taking hold. So I think that that's definitely working, because people who are on the fence, we just explain what it is and why we like Japanese and prefer ripping Japanese. Yes, of course we still rip English, but for the most part, I predominantly prefer ripping Japanese because it's more fun, and that's what this is all about, is presumably to have fun. So being able to get something out of your like booster box, even if it's a card you don't want, but it's still a hit, you got something, and that's better than getting skunked, any day of the week. So yeah, definitely not a ton of sales on booster boxes, but definitely like it's not like we sold nothing. So we did definitely move them. I've noticed that with the increased prices in Japanese stuff, I've been thinking about like Chinese stuff, and vending events are a really good way to kind of in the moment poll your audience. So just get live feedback on what they might think of. So as Japanese booster box prices are rising, like some of them are getting dangerously close to like English stuff, especially something like 151 in Japanese is like crazy expensive right now, and I don't think it'll go back down. So I know that EV Heroes in Japanese is a $640 booster box or whatever. So that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a lot of money. That would be the Evo Skies equivalent in Japanese. So that's a lot of money for a Japanese booster box, especially for Americans. So the fact that, 151 is pushing $250, $300, I don't think that one's going to go back down. So yeah. So then kind of looking at Chinese now, because it's more affordable, and what the sets are very different than both English and Japanese. So as they have access to all the art and all the different cards from all these different sets, they're now like kind of mishmashing sets, and different hits from different sets are being combined into their own unique like mix of cards and their own sets. So just kind of pulling and seeing like what people think. And I can't even tell you what the consensus was. I think people are open to it because it's cheaper. If they think they can get it more readily, people are always going to prefer to rip English, number one, and Japanese will always be number two, probably. But I think Chinese could easily be number three, outside of like the gem packs. People still love those, but if they're looking for like something else, like the new Blade Awakened set in Chinese is the Greninja set. So you get the Twilight Masquerade Greninja in Blade Awakened. So, and market on the Greninja in English is like $300 or something crazy. Well, crazy to me. But the Chinese one's like $130 or something like that. Well, that's very affordable for the same art. So yeah, so definitely pulling to see what we can get for the Chinese stuff, and if people would be interested in that. So yeah, jury's still out on that one, so we'll definitely see what comes in the future. But yeah, all in all, great show, and we're not going to be doing shows probably back-to-back days anymore, but we do have one coming up next weekend, so getting ready for that. Again, plenty of singles came in, so I'll be placing my Japanese order as soon as like the banks open up, because today, the recording of this would be on Sunday, so banks are all closed, so getting that ready to go. But good morning, kids awake, so gotta go play dad. Thanks everybody for watching. If you want to check out our website, monstermothstudio.com, get your own Japanese Chinese booster boxes. We'll see you on the next one.